The house that mirrors. We moved to Hollow Bend because the street was a loop. One way in, one way out, and the kind of quiet that felt curated. Lawns matched, porch lights matched. People nodded the same two nods, hello and good night, and then pretended they didn't watch one another through the blinds. Number 23 ruined the symmetry. The shingles peeled like curled fingernails. The porch sagged. A tarp shivered across the roof in every wind, a weak blue tongue. On garbage days, the man who lived there, Calder Voss, dragged other people's throwaways home. He moved at odd hours, always in the same long oilskin coat that made a soft, slick whisper when he walked. He wore a dark cap that hid his eyes. Sometimes he stood at his mailbox and held an envelope edged to the sun, like he was checking if the paper had bones. The HOA whispered. Brooke Collins, hair sprayed, smile tight, said she'd filed complaints 3 times. Mr. Dwyer, retired algebra teacher, said he'd seen Voss hauling a bundle that looked like limbs. Priya and Naveen, who lived 2 doors down with their beagle, just wanted the smell to stop. Wet metal and old lemons, whenever 3 a.m. floated past. I told myself we should mind our business. I told myself that until the chalk marks started. One morning, every curb on the loop had its house number written backward in tidy white lines. 17 became 71, 35 became 53. Ours, 21, was 12th. By noon, the chalk was gone, but the numbers stayed. Not on the cement inside the houses. At 12:21 p.m., our microwave flashed 12:12 and refused to heat. Mr. Dwyer's stair lights counted down from 71 to 0, and then up again for no one. Priya's baby monitor, she didn't have a baby, clicked on and whispered her childhood nickname in her mother's voice. When we stepped outside, Voss's porch was lined with glass jars, each fogged on the inside, like a breath had been caught and saved. Brooke staged an emergency HOA meeting in her kitchen. It smelled like disinfectant and victory. "This is how neighborhoods slide," she said. "First it's tarps, then it's crime. We're taking our street back." They wrote a plan on the back of a potluck sign-up. They called it a watch, but it was a stakeout. Dwyer would track Voss's lights from his bay window. Naveen set motion alerts on a driveway camera and pointed it at number 23. I got the late shift because I didn't protest loudly enough. At 3:13 a.m. exactly, the cul-de-sac hummed, like a far train, like a tuning fork pressed to jawbone. The oilskin coat moved behind Voss's blinds. The front door opened and he stepped onto the porch with a bundle of thin brown paper under his arm. He unrolled the paper on his driveway and taped it down in long strips with blue painter's tape. In the porch light, it looked like a body outline, except it had corners, room corners, a rectangle in a rectangle, a crooked little hallway scribbled in between. He stood with his hands on his hips and looked at the shape the way a contractor looks at a mistake made perfectly. Then he lifted a jar, wiped the breath from its glass with his sleeve, and poured nothing onto that paper hallway. The night folded. The hair on my arms stood up, not at the cold, but like the air had remembered me from somewhere else. The tape darkened as if something wet traveled along it, searching. The bundle under his arm had another plan in it, another layout. He taped that one too, and another. He worked until his porch light blinked out with the dawn. When the birds started, he picked up his jars and went inside. By 10, Brooke had posted a screenshot from her doorbell cam. Voss crouched, pouring, coat shiny, cap low. "We're going in," she texted. "Community cleanup, noon." We brought gloves and practiced our voices with the utility company. Polite, righteous. We knocked. We rang. We heard a sound from inside, like radio static tuned to a whispering station. The door eased open. The air was busy, not dusty. Busy, like stepping into a crowded elevator where nobody faces forward. The room we entered wasn't a living room. It was 3 living rooms, braided. A sagging couch that looked exactly like Mr. Dwyer's sat 3 inches from a sectional that was Priya and Naveen's. Same coffee ring on the right cushion. My grandmother's lamp, mine, glowed with a low wrong light by a television that wasn't plugged in. The walls were hung with frames that held paper cut to the size of photos. Empty rectangles waiting like open mouths. Brown paper lay on the floor in taped shapes. Rectangles, short halls, stair stubs. Each was labeled in pencil. Neat, blocky print. Dwyer. Living Priya, Naveen, Den. 21, Hall. There were jars on the mantle. Not spiders, not pickles. Jars of condensation, fog caught and preserved. A little swirl that refused to be still. Each jar wore a label. Rattle, late call. Didn't say. Locked door. Left it. Ask, Brooke said, her voice higher, to make it sound like leading. Ask him what this is. Voss stood in the archway to a kitchen that had a kitchen inside it. His eyes were plain, the color of utility poles. Decoys, he said simply. Rooms made of rooms. You keep a thing away from your house by giving it a better house. You give it the shape it can't resist. Naveen snorted. That's not a thing. You ever see a moth beat itself to death against a bulb and ignore the night? Voss asked. Things like shapes, they like the hum of what they want. A cul-de-sac is a loop. Loops keep things. Somebody has to hold what the loop doesn't swallow. Brooke pushed past him. You're a hoarder and a liar, she said brightly, like a reporter teasing the sting before commercial break. She yanked a jar from the shelf. Don't, Voss said. Not loud, not angry. Just exactly the shape of that word. Brooke held it anyway. The fog inside spun faster, whitening. It looked like breath trying to turn into a throat. Something knocked. It didn't come from the door behind us, and it didn't come from the walls. It came from the paper hallway taped on the floor. 3 slow raps, then another. Then a longer one that felt like a hand sliding down your spine and counting vertebrae. Brooke's hand shook. The jar slipped a little, just enough to chip against the fireplace. The lid popped. The fog came out like a question asked too close to the ear. The room got hungry. Lights in the decoy living rooms flickered. The couch cushions sighed, as if someone enormous had sat down. The empty frames filled with wallpaper patterns that weren't on the walls. Radio static poured through the vents and turned into voices that had almost said something. All the apologies shaped like knives you never gave and were now being given back dull and hot. Put it back, Voss said. I took the jar. My hands were steady in the way they are when a decision has already been made, and now your body just has to do it. I pressed it into the fog. It resisted. Then it went, all at once, like a fish slipping through weeds. I screwed the lid tight. The radio died to a whisper. The knock kept going, patient. What is this? I asked. Voss's eyes were tired without looking old. Hollow Bend was built on a street that failed, he said. The developer traced the old foundations and doubled the loop. It's a copy of a copy. Copies hum. They keep things. Not ghosts, not demons. Leftovers. All the don'ts and almost and nearlies that pile up when people mean well and then don't. If nobody organizes them, they learn to knock. They learn to want a door. And you organize them? Dwyer asked, hand on his chest, the way old men press on old math. I make mirrors, Voss said. I give the loop a place to look at itself. I lure it with the shapes you make and the trash you can't stand to keep. The coat helps. The time helps. The jars help. I can hold a cul-de-sac a long time if no one kicks the table. Brooke laughed, too loud. We're calling the city. Already did, Voss said. They'll come to inspect at noon tomorrow. They won't find me. I don't know why I believed him, and not the neatness of Brooke's smile. Maybe because the knock had learned my name in the sound. Maybe because at 3:13 the night hums like it's remembering. We left. Priya cried on her porch and said it was stupid to cry, and cried again. Naveen locked and unlocked their door 6 times, and then left it open. Brooke posted a public update about progress. Dwyer sat on his stairs and watched the numbers on his risers count him down. At 11:58 the next morning, the city truck got lost twice on the way to our loop, and left a violation on an empty infill lot with a for sale sign. At noon, the glass jars on Voss's mantle clicked like teeth in cold. At 12:07, his porch light died. At 12:08, the front door of every house on Hollow Bend unlocked itself and opened 3 inches. Nothing came in. The air leaned, listening. At 12:09, the knocking moved into our homes. It came from hallways that hadn't existed at breakfast. Short, narrow stubs that opened in the wrong direction. A hallway in Priya's kitchen. Dead ending where the fridge should be. A hallway in Dwyer's coat closet that didn't have a back and somehow had a back. A strip of darkness under our stairs where the light didn't know it had a job. The sound was patient and polite, the way a debt collector knocks if the neighbors can hear. I ran to number 23. The door was open. The decoy rooms were shaking themselves to pieces. The paper hallways lifted and laid down like tongues tasting rain. Jars trembled on their shelf. Voss was not there. The oilskin coat was, folded over a chair. It smelled like pennies and lemon rinds and the first breath you take after almost drowning. I put it on because no part of me thought of not doing that. Left to right, said a voice somewhere behind me. Not in the house, in the hum. Jars in your left hand, tape in your right. Decoys first, kitchen to kitchen, hall to hall. Give it better shapes than yours. I took a jar. Didn't say. It was heavier than fog. I set it in the square, labeled 21-JLL. The fog pounced, like an animal allowed back on a couch. The knock slid an inch sideways on the air. Help me, I called, because even if you are the person who moves toward the wrong sound, you should always ask anyway. People came. Not all. Enough. Priya brought her grandmother's scarf to lay on the paper den because her den always smelled like cardamom and grief, and that's a shape too. Dwyer carried his old calculator, still warm from a lifetime of hands. Naveen printed the outline of their beagle's paws on a napkin and laid that on a taped rectangle. Shapes want shapes. Brooke came last. She watched, arms folded, and then set the jar she'd dropped the day before on the mantle with both hands, like a church thing. Her eyes were red, the real kind. We worked until the jerky shadows in the wrong hallways calmed. We worked until the frames hung empty again. When the night finally sighed out, the cul-de-sac took a deep, clean breath, and the porch lights blinked in weary unison, like mice after the cat has moved. Voss didn't come back that day, or any day after. The city posted a notice on number 23. Abatement. They scheduled a crew. The crew never found the address, even standing on the curb, reading the number on the mailbox. People forget places like ours when they don't live inside them. Brooke led a big swing cleanup. Gutter trucks, yard bags, mulch piled like tents. We fixed everything you can fix with tools you can photograph. The street looked as staged as an apology post. I kept the coat. At 3:13 a.m., when the loop hummed, I walked the paper hallways and reset jars. I learned to tape decoys from memory. We replaced Voss's brown paper with plastic drop cloths, so the damp wouldn't rot the wood. And the knock didn't like that. But it learned. I learned the labels too. Key left, promise made, didn't go, laughed, looked away. People brought me their leftovers after dark. Old receipts, shriveled birthday balloons, a shoe with no pair. I set them in the mirror rooms, and the cul-de-sac left their real rooms mostly alone. It cost us. The oilskin coat made me look like a problem. Kids pedaled faster past our house. Dogs stared, ears low. The loop tilted slightly and made our driveway sink. One of our gutters learned the sound of my name and dropped dirty water when I walked beneath it. A petty little baptism. My wife slept on the far edge of the bed. She didn't say why, and I didn't ask because our walls have ears now, and I don't like to feed them. People asked what happened to the man in 23. I said I didn't know his first name. That was the truth. They asked why I wore his coat. I said rain. That was not the truth, but it was the shape we needed right then. On a Wednesday thick as old paper, a moving truck pulled into 7 Hollow Bend. Young couple. Grill. String lights. Their smiles had the loose, hopeful shape of people who think they picked the cul-de-sac, not the other way around. I watched them hang a wreath that didn't match anyone else's. I saw, way down at the far bend, number 41's porch sag, a 1/4 inch. Loops share their burdens. They copy. That night, I left a clean, empty jar on 7's porch with a label Voss's hand would have liked. For when you hear it. The next morning, a chalk number appeared on their curb. Backward. I'm learning. If the street keeps breathing, it's because someone in a coat holds the jars and makes the mirrors and walks the wrong halls, so the right ones can stay where they are. It isn't heroics, it's chores. It's mopping very carefully, so you don't make the floor interesting. If you ever find our loop by accident, if you ever stand at the open lip of your closet and feel the knot count you, come at 3:13. Bring the things you meant to throw away, but didn't. Birthday candles burned to metal, envelopes with your name misspelled, towels that never dry. I'll show you where to tape the halls. You'll see how shapes can love you. You'll see how they can learn your name, and you'll understand why the quiet in a cul-de-sac always sounds a little like a held breath. If this creeped you out, drop a comment with the weirdest neighbor thing you've ever seen, and subscribe to Spooky Chilling Tales for more. Your support keeps the porch light on.